Hey, tell me again how you love me.
You can't just make people's blood explode out of their bodies. You silly. I love you so much.
You silly goose. Just don't do it again.
Don't stop it.
Don't you dare.
Don't kill that nurse.
Hello.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. It's me, Hope. Welcome to Say Smut, a literary podcast. I'm so glad you could make it.
This is Hope's intro that she just warned me she wanted to put together.
That was delightful. Company today.
No.
I'm glad you could make it to Say Smut, a literary podcast for readers and non-readers.
I am Sarah, and I love to read.
And I'm Hope, and I'm bad at comedy bits.
Actually, some would say that was delightful. I just didn't know what to expect.
For the two of us who visually saw it, it was pretty good.
Hope did a whole hair flip turnaround. Oh, hello. Well, welcome. We are a little delayed, and the next month of recording will probably be a little wonky time-wise because somebody decided to get married.
Some of us have a lot of different life things happening and also a lot of different mental health that we got to take care of. And sometimes it delays the podcast, and that's fine.
That's okay, because this isn't our full-time job.
Take care of yourselves. Well, not laughing at take care of yourselves. Always take care of yourselves. We're laughing about whose full-time job this is or isn't. Moving on.
That's great. Well, I wanted to say I am freshly showered. I'm in my cozy blanket, and I've got a little t-shirt on that says, "You say cat lady like it's a bad thing." And it's got the little Aristocats girl on it.
Oh, yes, Marie. And Marie or the mom, who's the name?
Marie.
She's my girl.
And it's a shirt from my aunt and my cousin listens to us religiously. So hello, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
She's doing an internship at Disney. Well, I shouldn't call it an internship. It's like the college program, the Disney college program. But she's like living her best life in Florida right now. So hello, Rachel. And I'm wearing your shirt if you're not watching the YouTube version. But we are cozy and we are ready to talk about today's book. But before we get in, I want to give some content warnings. The warnings include guns, death, violence, sexual content, and fire. And we are going to be reviewing Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. I want to say that's her name. I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong.
We're so sorry. If Sarah doesn't know, I super don't know. So it's going to be wrong the whole time.
And here's the thing. I recommended this book and I thought, I haven't read this book in over a year and a half. And then I reread the book this last weekend and I thought, this is a little darker than I remember. This is a little more messed up than I remember.
I'm thrilled.
We're going to take this in stride. And we're gonna power through.
I wore my skeleton drinking coffee sweatshirt just for the occasion. I'm so excited.
She is ready for everything post-apocalyptic today. She is ready for the death incarnate that is about to come and curse the earth. Which this book is one of 4 in the series. And you'll kind of figure that out because it is about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Indeed.
And that is the topic I asked Hope to research. But before we get into the book, I do want to do scores. So on Storygraph, it has a 3.65, which it's not the best, but it gets there. But on Goodreads, it's a 3.9.
Both closer to a 4 than a 2.
Which Sarah gave it a 4 out of 5. So, and rereading it, I think what you're going to find, I'll get into this quite a bit in the book, but I really like the concept of this book. I think it's interesting. I think it's thought-provoking, but I mean, it's a smut book all the same. So before we get into it too far, I obviously want to disclose some information about Laura or Lara. I'm not quite sure what she goes by. Again, we're not sure about the name. She's a wife and a mom that lives in California. She's written quite a few fantasy books now. But there's been some like a little bit of controversy around her, specifically everywhere I went down this rabbit hole. It was like there were a lot of people of color and BIPOC creators who were saying she's great representation or she has terrible representation. So it felt like a really 50-50 split. And the two big conversations around diversity in her books included her book War, which is the second book in this series. And that's set in the Middle East. And it's obviously we have a white author, and there is some sensitivity concerns about her writing about war in the Middle East. But granted, this is also not like current war in the Middle East. It's about a post-apocalyptic war in the Middle East. So like, you know, how much of this is fantasy and how much are we just basing off real life? And then there's also like she had a whole separate Rhapsodic was her other book that had a lot of controversy around it, which she had a Black female main character named Temperance that went by Temper. And so people were calling out for having poor representation of enforcing the angry Black woman stereotype. But then I found BIPOC creators who had read the book and endorsed this because it wasn't quite, it's like the, I guess, knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, she's, you know, maybe an angry woman, but then you find out more about her and she's not that angry. I didn't read those books, but I do know that there's just been a lot of conversation. Everything I found was like 50-50 kind of split on how people viewed it.
Sure. And certainly we're not experts on diversity representation as the whitest people we know.
Yep. They're very, very white.
Like a piece of bread.
So I'm going to bring us into our book. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay. So our prologue tells us that the four horsemen of the apocalypse came to the world and rode to the four corners. It ended all kind of machines and technology. So like cars broke down, you know, computers broke down, except for some reason we still have electricity in some places. I'm not quite sure. I didn't dig into that, but I mean, we support clean energy and wind power. So who knows?
Glad it made it through the apocalypse.
Yeah, I'm
very
so glad
promising.
That's very, very promising. Just start your solar powers now, your solar power energy. And so they came to end the world. And some of the language, and we'll get more into the religious and spiritual aspects of this later in the book, but some of the language makes it clear that this is based on some Bible verses, that this might be close to like the rapture. And the idea is that they came to Earth, these four horsemen, they ride to the different corners, right? North, south, east, and west. And then they went to sleep. So you're kind of like, okay, these guys came in, destroyed a bunch of shit, and then disappeared essentially. And now we're living in this post-apocalyptic world that we really don't know what's going on. Okay. Right. Do you think you would survive a post-apocalyptic
world? Already just hell no. Hell no. I can't even watch post-apocalyptic television shows or movies. There's no world in which I'm surviving in the apocalypse. I am toast. I'm barely making it here, and things are not so bad.
I think I could make it a fairly decent time, but whether I would want to is the question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's something to like. I'm pretty tough. I have experienced like, you know, physical pain in a way that suggests that I could be like a tough cookie, I guess. I've broken some arms, but from an emotional perspective, I don't think there's any world in which I could survive. My instincts would really have to take over my emotions, and that rarely happens IRL. So,
and at some point you'd sit back and be like, is this even worth it at this point? Right. Like, I mean, at that point, I would really question, like, do I want to bring a family into this type of world? Man. How would I contribute to this kind of a world? I don't know. It would just give me a lot of questions about purpose and like what my purpose is in that type of an environment. But
right. Yeah. Ooh. So no. Answer's a big no for me, dog.
Big question mark, likely no. So our first chapter is titled Year 5 of the Horsemen. And we find out that Pestilence the Conqueror has woken 7 months ago. So we are actually, like I said, we are 5 years into this lifestyle. And now Pestilence has woken up and he is now riding a fun little horse through, North America and is bringing all sorts of illness and plague everywhere he goes. Because that's what pestilence mean. If you don't know, pestilence means like a fatal, deadly plague.
Getting down with the sickness, if you will.
The real down with the sickness.
Ooh,
I'm so glad we were both on that.
Incredible.
I wish you would have had drank that water right before you
I'm
laughed.
really glad that I stopped, or I might have spit water all over my microphone.
So our main character is 21-year-old Sarah Burns. Now, when I think about a post-apocalyptic world, I'm also thinking, where would I be at 21? I definitely wouldn't be able to make it at 21.
I also am not thinking of the most normal sounding names on the planet. So Sarah Burns was very jarring for me.
No, what do you have wrong with Sarah?
Nothing is wrong with Sarah. What I'm saying is that that's a very normal name, and I've set this up to be a very high fantasy, different kind of world.
No. We are very much in America. Adam Driver exists in this. I'm sorry, we're going to keep bringing that up. And if you don't know what we are talking about, please go listen to the Love Hypothesis.
I can't imagine not wanting to listen to all of our previous episodes after all these good teases we've made about that.
But I really think that this is going to be a here on out. We need to distinguish, is this a world where Adam Driver exists?
Answer, yes.
Answer is yes.
It's only weird if one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse also specifically looks like Adam Driver. If that's not the case, then we're doing okay.
Yeah. So she is living in Canada, in rural Canada, and she is a firefighter, and her colleagues are drawing matches to decide who's going to try and stay behind while the rest of the people run, because they have received reports. They've received reports that Pestilence and his little horsey is on the way to their area, and who's going to try and stay behind and try and kill him.
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking so much about how I would not survive in this environment. I want to crumble at the thought of drawing matches to stay behind in this fictional book. I'm so toasted the apocalypse.
Well, and here's the other thing. It's a little too close to home after COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're all like a little too close to it being IRL for me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to remind people multiple times during this book that we are in a fictional world. All these people are fake. So when we talk about some of the violence that happens, this is all fake. These are not real people. It's fine.
Not real. Both for your anxiety and for clarification, because this is happening in America, I guess.
It's happening in America where Adam Driver exists, but not real. This is not nonfiction. Anyway, so Sarah obviously pulls the match that requires her to stay. And so Sarah sets up on the highway and where he's expected to ride through, because there's also this idea that I don't know why television still works, but sometimes you can get it's almost like the electricity sometimes still works.
Like it's all radio. Static, but if you hit a TV a couple times up top and really mess with I don't know why I'm indicating like dial TVs or something we're still using where that even makes sense, because it super doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But yes, essentially think that where they can still kind of communicate and hear what's going on.
Sure.
And so there's reports of him coming from this certain area. So she sets up camp right on this highway. She's got her shotgun. She's bringing it up to her eye, and she's waiting and she's waiting. And she finally sees him come, and he rolls up, and it's slightly snowing out. It's the first snow of the season. It's getting chilly. And he's beautiful.
Of course. Oh, no, he's hot.
Well, a common word that's used is angelic. And once we get into more of the biblical references, this will obviously make sense.
Sure.
And he has long blonde hair and a gold crown, and he's got gold armor and a bow and a quiver on him. And she doesn't take long to admire him before bang, she shoots the man.
Well, that is the one thing she was supposed to do. So
yeah. So he falls off his horse, and she thinks it's done. And she's like a little sick over this, because I think even when we talk about, you'd never know what you'd do in that situation.
Right.
you kind of sit down and you think it would still suck, right?
Yeah, it would feel bad. Yes. I would hope it would feel bad.
And she's like, I've got to finish the job. So what does she do? She pulls out some lighter fluid and a match.
The one that she pulled? The same
that
match?
Would be really funny. It's kind of like when they carve a name on a bullet for somebody, like when gangs
use that one. You can't kill them with any other bullets or it doesn't count.
So she starts the man on fire and he like is burning, and slowly you kind of hear him say, please, in all of this. And she feels very weird about the whole thing, but she's like, it's for the greater good. I've done the right thing. Before we move on, I would like you to tell us a little bit about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, please.
Yes, I'd love to. And I am going to talk a little bit about Pestilence in particular, because as it turns out, that's a really interesting of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So, variety of sources for this. It is, spoiler alert, very rooted in a variety of religions. So we've got some Christianity, we've got some Judaism. I am still not an expert on any of the things I'm researching, so don't be surprised when I say do things that aren't correct, and I'm trying my best. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so in this book series, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse are pestilence, war, famine, and death. These are the most common ones that I'm familiar with. They are popular in pop culture. There are kind of differentiations on what they are and how they're interpreted based on the origin. So I'm going to kind of talk about 2 variations with pestilence in particular. But so yes, when you Google 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, your top responses, including the Wikipedia page that I reference a lot for this research, are going to talk about the figures described in the book of Revelations, which is in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. So they're not quite the same as the pestilence, war, famine, and death we all know and love.
We all love.
We know them. We're personal, close, and intimate friends with all 4 of them. And we that's what we know. In Christianity, the 4 horsemen include writers on, I don't know if a lot of people know this. I don't think I really did either. They're not explicitly described as war came on a horse and famine, the second horseman. They're described as dudes on horses and described by their color in the Bible. So first is a rider on a white horse, and then there's a red horse, a black horse, and a green horse.
Interesting.
For context. In the Wikipedia and also just in the Bible. So the white horse is described as having a bow and a crown, is interpreted as invoking pestilence. It is a little bit mentioned in the Bible, but also interpreted as representing Christ or the Antichrist. So not just sickness. In Christianity in particular, which is again kind of the top result for the source of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, the interpretation of it is a little bit different. But essentially it's saying Jesus is going to come and judge us. 4 riders will appear on horses. A white horse does this, a black horse does this, a green horse does this, red horse does this. And those are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And what they're carrying and the stuff they bring are indicative of those, war, famine, death.
Interesting.
Is kind of where it comes from. So, yes, white horse in Christianity, sometimes interpreted as Christ or Antichrist. We'll get into the pestilence of it in a second. Like, it is kind of mentioned in the Bible, but it's kind of different. It's a little confusing. The rider on the red horse has a sword. I pronounced the W. I'm going to go. I'm going to go home, and I am home. I just need to quit. A sword. Wow. And they are interpreted to be the creator of war and conflict. So that's where war comes from. The black horse is depicted as a food merchant carrying scales, and that's supposed to signify famine. And then the final rider on the green horse is described as being death accompanied by Hades, and is the general depiction of death.
This is so interesting, because I would have thought, obviously, death would be black horse.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? I was a little surprised by that too, but I had read somewhere, green being associated with like decay and stuff. Like I kind of get it.
If you look at the covers, I'm pretty sure. Oh gosh, famine is a green cover. Yeah, famine's the green cover, and then we have death is more of like a black blue color. And so that's interesting. Anyway.
That makes sense to me. I like that in the book, you had mentioned that rather than being, I don't know, in my head, I would have imagined Pestilence being like gross, and honestly green would be the color I would have picked for it. But I like that in the book is like hot and like glowy and shiny hot. And like it was weird to say that I like that he's hot. It aligns with what I was reading about interpretations of this horse being, first of all, it's a white horse, and then also maybe being Christ or the Antichrist. Like, it makes sense that in the book he would be described in the way that he's being described, because in the Bible he's not like a grody green like disease goblin.
Yeah.
Disease goblin. I do have a reading from the book of Revelations, chapter 6, verse 8.
Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today.
You don't have to bow your head. I'm just going to read. Okay. I'm just going to read this thing from the Bible. But this is just kind of on the last horse I pulled, and it says, I looked, and there was a pale green horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades accompanied him. They were given authority over a quarter of the earth to kill with sword, famine, and plague, and by means of the beasts of the earth. Which, in summary, Christianity sometimes represents the four horsemen as visions of the harbingers of the Last Judgment.
Yep.
Setting a divine end time upon the world. Sometimes, like the green horse in particular, in that reading I pull up, because it sort of encompasses all of the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah. And he's kind of the end.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be, because I've read all 4 books, if you haven't caught on yet. And I'm not saying that these are really great representations of the Bible, but
right. I mean,
but I will say, like, it's very much that he is kind of the overall ruler of the 4. Like, he is the last one. He's the last judgment. And we'll even get into that in this book, because there's a moment of that where he's kind of the final say of whether or not we should be given time to redeem or not.
Yes. Now I'm gonna come at you like a white horse, which is what I wrote in my research notes. I'm gonna zoom in specifically on the white horse and on Pestilence in particular.
Perfect.
So I'm sure everybody's ears perked up when I mentioned that the white horse and the rider invoked Pestilence, because it's the book that we're talking about, and it's the horsemen that we're focusing on. The Four Horsemen Wikipedia mentions towards the bottom of the white horse section in particular, that kind of goes into the different interpretations of this horse and the rider and what it can mean. Towards the very end of it, there is a section that says, and I'm just going to direct quote, under another interpretation, the first horseman is called Pestilence and is associated with infectious disease and plague. It appears at least as early as 1906 in the Jewish Encyclopedia. This particular interpretation is common in popular culture references to the Four Horsemen. So in kind of the Christian interpretation, there isn't, war and famine and death are all kind of consistently referenced, but what you call that first horse is not so consistent. And the most common pop culture interpretation of it being Pestilence is, at least according to this Wikipedia, derived from the Judaism interpretation of the reading instead of the Christianity one. So to learn more about this, I typed my way over to JewishEncyclopedia.com, which I'm thrilled to tell you is the full unedited version of this 12-volume Jewish encyclopedia that was published between 1901 and 1906. Obviously, I only looked up the parts about this and didn't read a whole 12-edition encyclopedia. But
thank you to the curators who are keeping that website going.
Yes. A quick disclaimer worth just kind of saying, because it's on the website. The Jewish Encyclopedia and JewishEncyclopedia.com in general as a resource does not contain information about modern Jewish history, because it was published in the early 1900s.
Got it.
It's not like a fact to know as it pertains to the research I've conducted today, but it doesn't, and the website tells you this, have information on things like the creation of Israel or the Holocaust or more recent events, because they were made in like 1901 through 1906. So just as a disclaimer to that, as a source for information, it won't have things like that in there. It does have great info on other Jewish history and religion and customs. Anywho, just wanted to caveat that. Seemed like something to bring up. But anyway, Jewish Encyclopedia states that pestilence is one of the 4 judgments which God inflicted on Jerusalem in order to turn it into a wilderness. So that linked me over. I wanted to get the reading from the Torah. So I went to Shabbat.com. And in Ezekiel chapter 14, I think they're verses. If they're not, I'm sorry. Verse reading, line 12, or 21, not 12. I'm also apparently dyslexic. Anyway, it says, for said the Lord God, how much more when I send all 4 of my evil judgments, sword, famine, wild beast, and pestilence against Jerusalem, ought I to cut off from it man and beast. So that's just the reading it comes from. But all of that to say, in Ezekiel, in the Torah, is where they have pestilence specifically called out. It's not quite written that way in the Christian interpretation. When you look at the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse via Google, you're most commonly going to see that it comes from Christianity. But that specific interpretation of our dude in this book is not derived from that interpretation. Our pals' war, famine, and death align with Christianity's interpretation, but the pestilence one varies. Amen. That's the end of my research.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for that deep dive. Second of all, as somebody who grew up in the church, and I know you grew up in the church as well, and as somebody who currently goes to church, but as somebody who can also step back and look at things very objectively, I think the Bible is such an interesting text just from how we have deep dive interpreted things. Indeed. And how we have used, or like the translations of words. You know, I think that's like so interesting that we pull also from Judaism so closely, because obviously if you are a more Reformed Christian, you or Catholic, you know that Jesus Christ was a Jew, and we talk a lot about that. And so I just think it's so interesting when we pull like one phrase and all of a sudden we create all these interpretations of it. And this is just the pinnacle of that as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We're going to get into more of this religious talk from a theoretical POV. I'm not going to get up on a soapbox and start telling you what to believe. But I also think it's interesting that they mention Hades in it, because if anybody knows me, they know I love Greek mythology. And obviously Hades is represented in Greek mythology. And so I know that technically that name can also just mean like essentially a personification of death or the underworld.
Yeah, like sometimes it's underworld, undertaker. Sometimes you kind of strip that interpretation out of it and it's just sort of Satan, but that kind of is taking it away from its...
Yeah, because he's not, and in Greek mythology at least, Hades is not supposed to be evil. He's really just supposed to be there to take care of people after they've died.
Yeah, someone has to do that job, and he's the one who does that job.
And even within the underworld, as they talk about, there are places of paradise and there are places of more pain and suffering. So like he's in control of all of it. So when we talk about the underworld, I think it gets a lot of fear just because it's the concept of death and what comes after death. So anyway, sorry, I will get off this. We'll do another whole thing, Smut Book, about
welcome to
Greek
our
mythology.
Very misguided religious podcast we just
started. Okay, so we are back at it. She has now killed him. She has burnt him.
And they don't call her Sarah Burns for nothing.
That's great. Actually, for some reason, I did not pick up on that pun. And so she goes back to her little sleeping bag and falls asleep. But next thing she knows, she's woken by a hand around her throat and the face of a monster looking back at her.
Spooky.
This is a skeleton man who has been burnt.
Yeah, I was gonna say, couldn't be the man I just set ablaze moments ago.
And spoiler alert, this man cannot die. So she can shoot him.
You mean to tell me that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse can't just be shot and then burnt?
I guess not. Unfortunately.
Who could have seen that coming? I just thought the book was gonna end.
I really sat back and I'm like, really? Did you really not think somebody hadn't tried already in the last 7 months?
Right.
Did you really think no law enforcement agency even, or, any sort of federal department tried to not stop him? Like, what? Are you serious?
This being is a harbinger of the end of the world, but I bet nobody tried to shoot it with a gun.
And I mean, we all saw what happened with the balloon that China sent over. I mean, we were all up in that business. So you really think they wouldn't do something about this man? Okay. All right, you guys. So
Sarah, I'm gonna need you to suspend your disbelief.
Oh yeah, sorry. Wow, how the turns have tabled.
Oh, how
anyway.
the turns tabled.
So he pulls her out of the tent as a burned skeleton man, because his body has not quite obviously regenerated. And he
very Ghost Rider.
Yes, very Ghost Rider.
Very Nick Cage Ghost Rider.
Can we tie Nick Cage and Adam Driver into every podcast we do? Because
we can't, because I'm gonna envision this man as Nicolas Cage for the rest of the plot. See, it's gonna be a problem. Let's move on.
We need to cast him. I'm thinking like you could go Chris Hemsworth. If
Sure.
you really wanted to, like Thor, Love and Thunder.
No offense to Nicolas Cage, but I gotta undo that deal I just did, and it's a bummer.
I can't think of a lot of blonde actors, like, for some reason. Anyway, so she gets pulled out, and he's like threatening her, and then he's like, he also says to her, like, did you really think no one's tried killing me? Like, did you not think about this? So she's like, are you going to kill me or what? Like, just do it already. I've known that this was going to happen. And he's like, you know what? No, I'm going to make you suffer. Because when I was sitting there pleading for you to
not burn me alive,
you didn't listen. You didn't take mercy on me. So I'm not going to show you any mercy by just ending your life. I'm going to make you miserable. So what does he do? He ties her to the back of his horse and makes her run behind him while he gallops through the area to the next community.
That's really bad. Yeah, that sucks.
And like, good thing she's a firefighter and she's kind of got a honed body that she can kind of keep up.
Even so,
still rough.
Now I'm not suspending my disbelief.
So he stops at an abandoned house, and what you're going to find out, and you can keep a tally now if you want. It's already I leave a couple abandoned houses out of this. But this is the whole series relies heavily on abandoned houses.
I would imagine.
Or, inhabited houses. So we'll get into that later. So he's almost fully healed by this point. And God forgive her, but she's definitely checking him out already. So, I mean, this man's beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful bod. We don't objectify men here, but this also isn't a real man because he's just like a personified concept, right? Like he's not really a man.
This isn't a regular man. This is Nicolas Cage.
This is Nicolas Cage. So during their first real conversation, he's like telling her, I begged you for mercy. You didn't give it. And he's like, she says, you're here to destroy us, dude. Like, what did you expect? And he's like, no, you guys were destroying each other before we even arrived. We just came to finish the job.
Ain't that the truth, though?
Yeah. I mean, look at our current situation. He also makes it clear he's only keeping her to make her an example to anybody else who tries to kill him. Like,
if you try and kill me, I'm going to, and I'm just going to guess, fall madly in love with you and fuck your brains out.
We're not there yet. Stop ruining the ending.
Hope, don't guess what's going to happen in the Smut book.
No, please don't. Because this also seems unnecessary when you regenerate anyway and you can't die. So, like, why do you even... Like, the only reason I can think is, like, he's thinking, okay, I don't need any more hangups as I'm... Like, these are just wasting my time as I'm trying to spread the plague. So...
I'm trying to spread the plague. Could you just...
Can you just...
Could you not? Could you don't?
I need you to stop. I'm trying to do something here. So this is like this weird culture shock that happens for him where he realizes, oh, she needs to like sleep and eat and bathe and go to the bathroom. And that's another scene that happens quite often is he like watches her when she goes to the bathroom because he doesn't think she's going to not try and escape or like try and kill him again. So he's like, my eyes on you constantly.
That's just silly though, because as we've already proven, she can't really kill you. So
yeah, but like
we can probably let her poop by herself.
We'll get into it a little later.
Okay.
So the next night they stop at another house. And that actually has people inside. And he's like, you're gonna provide some stuff for my prisoner. And the woman's like, actually, I'm not. Thanks. Which is like the boldest thing in the world. But he's like, he just ignores her and waltzes in. And at this point in the story, there's obviously lots of hostility between Sarah and Pestilence.
Mm-hmm.
But that night, Sarah tries to tell him why she did it. Because at the end of the day, she's still human and she still kind of feels bad. Because this was really grotesque and this was really just terrible for her to do. And she explains that they drew matches and that she hated doing it. But she also says, I don't regret it because I was doing it for humankind.
Right.
And this doesn't get through to him at all, obviously.
Well, no, I'm not surprised.
You should also realize that at this point, this man has like no facial emotion, like facial expressions, no emotions. Like he's very cold and like disengaged with the whole situation.
Dead inside.
Yeah, he's dead inside, per your sweatshirt. So that night she wakes up to the sounds of cries and there's some internal turmoil because she's stuck in this second floor bedroom. And she's alone. And she's like, okay, clearly there's something going on. I don't know what's going on, but there's a window right there. I'm going to try and escape right now. So she gets out of the window. She jumps down to the second floor. Surprisingly, does not break anything.
Good job.
That great after, the time she's had. Because obviously her body's wearing down from running all day, essentially. And she's, got sores on her. She's struggling with recovering.
One of 1 million reasons why I will not survive an apocalypse,
especially being tied to the back of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Yeah,
specifically bad.
So she jumps out of the window. She starts running and she thinks she's free. She's like running through this field. She thinks she's free until she's shot in the back with an arrow twice. Oops. Not just once, twice. I'm not sure how this wasn't fatal. But okay.
Suspend your disbelief. This is the first time that you've not had your disbelief suspended.
I know. Maybe I'm just in a mood. I'm just in a mood this time.
It's all too real this time.
I think I can suspend belief when it's like emotional stuff, but when it's actual logistical things, I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
So not sure how she didn't die, but he comes and he's like, how dare you escape me? And yanks out those arrows. And then ties her to the back of the horse and tells her sleeping is now a luxury that she is not entitled to.
I mean, that's fine, but she's just going to die real fast.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're not all sure what happened at that house that somebody was screaming at. We think like they were getting sick and it was obviously, not coping well with that. And so during the next stretch of travel, she stumbles and she can't get back up. So she starts being dragged.
Oh.
And I'm going to again remind you, this is not real. And one of her shoulders gets dislocated.
Oh, that's a bummer.
And she's in so much pain, she passes out.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. So she's convinced she's dying. But in this weird conscious, like coming in and out, she is having her wounds taken care of. And he says something along the lines, which she believes is like, maybe this is a dream. I'm not sure if this is real. She hears a voice say, which you can obviously think it's Pestilence. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let you die, but don't forget this act of kindness. So reasonably, she like points out to him, when they wake up and he, okay, sorry, let me back up a second. I did forget one thing here. She like realizes that she's holding his hand at some point, and as soon as she wakes up, he all of a sudden is like, ew, gross, cooties. So
yuck.
Man was fine with it until she woke up. And turns out she's in a bed, he's taking care of her wounds, and he was like, again, I'm not gonna let you die, but don't act like you forgot this.
It's like that exact scene in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah,
Belle
exactly.
Tries to run away.
And she reasonably points out, like,
if you hadn't frightened me, I wouldn't run away.
Like, and also, like, you inflicted all this pain. Like, why are you acting like you're the hero now?
You did do this thing.
Yes. So for a few days, they're in this house, and he's like low-key, reluctantly taking care of her. But one of the things he does is he brings her weird combinations of food because he's immortal and doesn't know what humans eat. So what do you think is one thing he tries to bring her?
Well, this is hard because I'm not 100% sure what the resources are like in this apocalyptic world.
Post-apocalyptics, what would be some things that, I mean, obviously it's not going to be like fruit or anything crazy.
No, it's going to be like dry beans and a can of like tomatoes with no can opener, so you can't open it or eat it.
Struggle. It's
going to be like, I found some branches outside. And here's the end of a toilet paper roll.
Close, because it's mustard and uncooked pasta.
To be fair, I would eat those things if I had to. And I love mustard.
I don't like mustard, but did you ever go through that phase in middle school when people would like weirdly
eat dry spaghetti?
Yeah. Like, yeah, I don't know why that was a thing.
Munch it, like take it long way, just kind of munch it.
Yeah, it's so weird. I don't know why we all did that.
Closest to being a cartoon depiction of a beaver that I've ever been, I guess.
Yeah. Well, this house that they're in, that she wakes up in, isn't empty. There's a man who obviously comes down with the plague, and he's very close to death. And once she's able to get out of bed, she, as a natural like first responder, wants to start caring for the man and making him comfortable and keeping him company. So she holds his hand and recites poetry, because she wanted to be an English major at one point and like loves to memorize poetry and literature. And so she is like trying to get him as comfortable as she can. And like they even drink a little bit of liquor together, and then he passes away. So as they get on the road again, Pestilence actually lets her sit with him on the saddle this time. We've now upgraded. Awesome.
I'm tired of healing you all the time from the abusive thing I'm doing.
Yeah, this sucks that my pet isn't doing what it should.
Dragging your animal on the ground.
We do not endorse any animal cruelty in this podcast.
We sure don't.
So she starts asking him questions, which he is like, I would love this to be a quiet ride, please. Like, do not talk to me.
Yeah, this is Shrek and Donkey vibes.
This is Shrek and Donkey. I literally thought this when we were going through the book again. I thought, you know what? This is the vibe. And she notes that he's attached his word to, or himself to, the word of kindness. He's always threatening that the kindness will end. His kindness will end. He's being kind to her.
Yeah.
And she needs to stay put or he will not be kind to her, which we can get into how this is abusive, but I don't think we need to.
How Jonah know?
Okay, Jonah.
Anyway,
I feel like if you go back and listen to these podcasts in a year, you'll really know what time we were at.
Yeah,
by these life events that we're
not for nothing are we sitting here dating ourselves as much as possible with every reference we make.
So, also, at each house they keep stopping at, it shows different personality, right? If you go into somebody's house, you're going to see the inside of their life and the inside of their minds and their hearts and
the inside of their house.
And the inside of their house. And so she's seeing, pictures on the wall, things that people have collected clock
collections.
They are collecting clocks. And it's bringing up old memories for her, but it's also really sad because she's realizing that these people either died or they ran or whatever, to get away from this situation. And here she is with the man who's creating that situation. So then there's this like obvious scene that happens when an immortal and human interact, which is another trope I love. I love these little mini tropes that I will discuss in some of these podcasts, which is, he comes out of the shower naked and she's like, geez, put some clothes on. And he's like, oh, you humans and your propriety, you and your innocence, get over it. It's a body, which, I mean, accurate.
We're balls out every day, all the time in superhuman world.
Immortal, angelic world.
In my immortal, that one song from Evanescence, I think.
Dating ourselves once again. So she like obviously gets over this pretty quick and starts like oogling him, and she's like, oh, look at his body.
Well, in my case, don't mind if I doodly do.
Well, if you're just gonna put it out there, I might as well take a gander. So he like orders her to take off her clothes and like get on the couch, and it's like, but he's only doing it so he can get to her wounds in her back and like, you know,
I didn't think you were going to say wounds.
Womb.
Yeah, and I was concerned about it. I was concerned about what I thought you were saying.
Womb.
Just direct line right to the womb.
And like during this, him taking care of her, she's like, hey, you might want to disinfect my wounds because like we don't want any infections happening. He's like, no, I can control all infections, so I can make sure it doesn't get infected. Okay, cool flex. I don't
we really could have used you circa 2019, 2020.
Yeah, I know. And like the best part is Famine's book. We'll get into all this a little bit later, but Famine's book, he can control growth and like,
oh, so you could just feed people and you just won't?
No, well, obviously that's the concept, is that he kills all these plants, right? But when they're having sex, she's worried she's gonna get pregnant, and he's like, no, I can kill off the sperm essentially in your body.
no, it's all watermelon seeds. You will grow a watermelon in your stomach.
You will grow a watermelon.
This is the one time where that's true.
But it's so funny to me because I'm just thinking like, is that cute or not? That sounds so nasty.
I have a lot of thoughts about it, and I'm going to keep them zipped up tight and in my brain.
Being like, I can prevent the sperm from attaching to the egg.
Okay.
And anyway, so this guy can prevent infections, which also feels like kind of the similar concept that like, wouldn't you be able to also not like be able to prevent
the infection of pregnancy?
The infection of pregnancy.
I don't think that's how that works.
I don't know. It sounds more logical than the freaking. It's more to do with the body than the growth of watermelons. I don't know.
Man. Anyway.
Anywho, so sorry, now my mind is just down this path because now I'm thinking about death, and I had read that book so long ago that I'm like, what if he just killed the sperm?
Conversely, I'm just thinking about those watermelon Laffy Taffies that had little fake black seeds in them.
No. Ew, gross. Okay, we're on to the next. Okay. So he's acting like looking at her is like the most disappointing view he's had all day. Cool. Like he's like, you are not appealing. You just have a body. Everybody has a body. Like there's no sexual tension at this point except for her little checking him out. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she keeps asking questions of like, why are you doing this? You know, a logical question you would ask if you were spending lots of time with the harbinger of death, you know, or pestilence. And his return is he wants obviously her to suffer, and he needs to keep her alive in order to enact his revenge on her for what she had done to him. Okay,
but like, don't you have other stuff going on?
I mean, it would get really boring if you were on the road just spreading illness all day.
That's true, but like, I just feel if you're like a super being with, you know, world-ending powers, that doing this to a human would be deeply boring because humans comparatively would be deeply boring.
You would think, but this does not go that way. So there's also this thing whenever she begs or says please, he loves to point out, well, I begged. I said please, and you still set me on fucking fire.
And so instead of proving that I'm a better person than you by not doing that, I'm going to do the same thing to you because that's fair.
That's revenge. Quite literally. And his whole thing is like, anytime she even slips the word please into things, it's immediately a no. Like that's off the table. If I was considering it and you said please, nope, absolutely not.
Interesting.
There's another scene where there's she's having a bath and he's helping her, but it's not sexy. It's more like she can't use her back muscles to reach her back. So
like her shoulder was previously not in its correct location, and
so or
things kind of hard.
He shot her twice in the back with his
that did happen. I had forgotten.
And so he's like, what do I do like with this living human and her inability to function while being injured? This is so inconvenient. And at one point, she tells him her name. She's like, by the way, I'm Sarah. And he's like, it doesn't matter. You're human to me. I'll keep calling you human. And he's like, he literally says, quote, what does it matter? You're all the same. And she's like, well, you really know how to make a girl feel special. And he's like, you're not special. Literally, you're not special. No one is special. you're all humans and you're all doing the same bullshit.
Honestly, that's so true, though.
It's like a little bit of a reality check.
Straight up, I agree.
And so special. She finds out he obviously doesn't have a name other than Pestilence. And she
and I would love for him to have any other name because clearly I can't pronounce it.
Pestilence.
Give me anything else to call this being.
But he's like, I don't need a name. Like, names are not important. Okay. So if a horseman of the apocalypse came to hang out with you, what food would you want to expose to him first?
That's tough.
You know, and this is post-apocalyptic world, so you can't
right because the resources. The other thing that's straight up been in my head this whole time is Zombieland, so I can only think about Twinkies. I've just been thinking about Twinkies this entire time.
What are you going to show him? You can have little delicacies, but like you're not going to get, you know.
Right. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that I think would be like around a lot, and it's not great. Like there's just like a lot of raisins. It's like a food that there's a lot of because it's raisins, but no one really buys it because that's not what you ever want, even in the apocalypse. So like, I guess there's these raisins.
Here,
now that there's no other real food, raisins aren't so bad. And so nothing is going to be great, but maybe you have an olive. No one wants anything salty when it's the apocalypse.
No, I feel like, and especially if you're on the road, you don't want to
but then you find a jar. And so then you have one and it's the first time you've had an olive in a while. And you're like, I remember these being good. It's not great because there's no food or water and everything's bad. But in different circumstances, olives, pretty good snack.
Like those little pickles too.
If we're being up, pickles are the vibe though. I love pickles.
Those are good.
I like if I want to show him food that I enjoy, it's like cheese and pickles and like pizza and stuff, but it's the apocalypse, so I just don't assume we have those things.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I would love some like canned lasagna, like the Chef Boyardee. That would definitely be in the apocalypse. Those would survive, 100 years in the apocalypse. Well, she gives him hot chocolate, which is a personal fave of mine.
That's fun. I like hot chocolate too.
And he seems almost tempted to take it, and then he just fucking dumps it out, which I'm like,
this is human garbage.
That's so rude. That would be like a federal crime, in my opinion, during the apocalypse. Like, where are you getting all this hot chocolate?
Now, I know that the great Tom Hanks said in Polar Express that there was only one rule, and it was to never, ever let it cool. But there's two rules, and the other one's don't throw it away when a human gives it to you. That's rude.
That's so rude. But he doesn't need to eat. And he doesn't see the value in doing things that are purposeless. But you can start seeing that this is where the small civil moments are coming along for them, right? So he actually stops at a hospital to help get her more care. And she starts freaking out and being like, OMG, if we go into the hospital, they're all going to die. And he's like, I don't even need to walk into that hospital to kill them. Yeah. I literally just need to roll
the question, through. Why can't you could just do this so much faster.
We'll get to that in a second. But he's like, I don't need to go in there. And it's kind of fucked because he's like, look at all these faces that are going to die because of this illness. Like, why would you say that?
That's lame.
Okay, we get it. So they stop at another house where he tries a piece of pie because they had one of those maybe frozen or but she has a little pie and he tries it and he's like, actually, that was pretty good.
It's like, oh shit, I didn't know about pie before.
And it's really weird vibes after that hospital scene. But okay. Anyway, so they're back on the road again. If you can't tell, this is going to be a theme where this is honestly the theme of the entire series, which is just.
I did have a house tally, but I don't think it's reasonable to try and keep up with all the different houses.
I did not include all of the houses.
I stopped at 3.
Yeah, there's so many. So she's clearly experiencing some hypothermia at this point. And he's like, what's wrong with you? And she's like,
damn it.
I'm fucking cold. And he's like, why didn't you tell me? And she's passing out. And she's like, because you told me I was going to suffer. I didn't think you were going to do anything if I told you.
It was part of the deal, my guy.
And so he's like, I didn't want you to suffer like this. And she's like,
I can't know that.
Know the rules.
I can't know that.
So He takes her into this house with a family and warms her up. And she looks around and realizes there's children in the house. And she's like, please don't let these people die. And he's like, actually, that's my whole job.
He's like, I gotta let these people die.
And it's really confusing because they stay at the house and then she aids the family while they die. And obviously there's an argument that they get into over it. And then he just like gives her a sandwich and was like, yeah, I liked the taste of this jam and I thought you might too, which is like, cool, bro. I've been here doing this jam thing. I know that it tastes good. You don't got to tell me.
I've experienced jam before. And now is a weird time, by the way.
And now is a weird like peace offering time for you to just give me a sandwich after I just watched children die of the plague.
Sorry about these dead kids. I heard that people like jam.
Yeah, this kind of tastes sweet. And then he just quietly mentions that like he doesn't like watching them die either. Okay.
All right. Well,
that sounds like a you problem. So it should be obvious by now that they're having lots of conversation about humanity and human emotions, including him inquiring about like, why do you keep taking care of these people when they're dying? And she's like, because no one wants to be alone like before they die. Like that's, it's all about making people comfortable and like,
when
yeah,
they're going to feelings. It feels bad and you got to fix the feelings, sir.
Compassion. And so they get ambushed outside of a city, and I believe it's Vancouver, if I'm correct. And she falls off the horse and starts aiding other people because she's a first responder. And this is kind of like the first moment where she's really publicly seen because, you know, they're tracking him. Everybody like kind of knows the area he's in.
He's coming up on the TV blips that I've again interpreted to be old school TVs and not the kind of TVs they would actually
like
be.
Silent like film, and then it's like the broadcasters.
It would have to just be flat screen TVs everywhere, and for some reason in my head it's like old tubes and dials and a lot of hitting the top of a very big TV, and that's just so not how this would be at all.
Well, it's getting around. This is the first moment she's being seen with the horseman. So now people are going to know after this instance that she is with him. He has taken a woman.
And they'll see what shit condition she's in and be like, they must be friends.
They must be.
No possible world in which she's like being held captive. She's
that's the other weird thing is like, they're like, okay, I guess we're just going to ignore the fact that he's taken a hostage.
Like I know that she's had some baths, but she is still a woman who's had hypothermia and was dragged along the ground for a long time. So I'm
shot in the back twice.
I'm confident she looks like absolute shit. So pretty crazy to be like, she's definitely in on it. I can tell.
Honestly, we all know that this is going to go to the way of them falling in love. But imagine the ego boost you'd get if this man saw you at your worst and he's like, you're still so hot.
But then again, like, will he even, because he's already said, you're just really suck to look at.
Yeah, literally. Well, they escape this whole ambush situation and they go to Vancouver Island and they're just galloping along. And how do you get to an island if you're galloping?
But the magic of
galloping on water, because that's
so now that you've tipped your hand and that they just get a gallop on water, it's not as fun as the more logical but less reasonable thing I was going to say, which was if you kill an absolute shit ton of animals in the water and they all float up, you could make a bridge.
No, I'm going to let you know right now. No, that sounds actually less logical than referring to the biblical guy as having a horse that can walk on water. Crazy concept.
Yeah, but to be fair, we're going off of the interpretation of this man inflicts disease, not the interpretation of this man could be Jesus or Antichrist. So in my head, I was
say that the white horse,
a bridge of dead animals. But I also said that the most common pop culture references are from the Jewish interpretation, which focuses more on the pestilence, which is what the book is called. So he could have made a dead fish bridge for his horse to trample across. He just didn't happen to do it that way.
We're going to put a poll like we did our last one on Instagram. Do you think it's more logical for his horse to run on water, or do you think it's more logical for him to make a dead fish bridge?
I don't want to know what you think is more logical. I want to know what you think is specifically funnier to imagine in your head.
Well, this all comes back into play, but they obviously escape the scene. They, they're on the run. And it's kind of a surprise for him that she didn't run in that situation, and that she started taking care of him. And even though he's immortal, because he had gotten some injuries during that ambush. So now they're at a house after the ambush, and he finds a bottle of alcohol. And this man can't die. He doesn't need food, and he doesn't need to go to the bathroom.
But he can get drunk?
And he's practically immune to every other human response, but this man can, in fact, get drunk.
I hate it here. I don't. I'm having a lot of fun, but that's so stupid.
And so that's exactly what happens. And I have said this before. I love when there is a drunk scene when somebody starts confessing shit they shouldn't. I wish he would have confessed
when
more.
I said your body sucked to look at, I was lying.
Yeah, well, it doesn't go quite that far. But during this drunken experience, those couple of years, he explains that those couple of years where the horsemen were asleep, it was actually the time for humans to redeem themselves. They were kind of like, okay, look,
you should have communicated that.
You should have like posted a Facebook message.
Nobody
or
told
like
me.
Sent out an Amber Alert, but for that,
Yeah.
I guess you did take away all technology, so who knows? Anyway, so he's like, we were all sleeping. We were hoping you would redeem yourself, but you didn't. He also admits to her that he's feeling, quote, something when he looks at her. And it's driving him crazy because now he's starting to experience these semi-human emotions when he's around her.
Oh, so it's not just like indigestion or not?
No.
So
it's
that's
not
a hangover.
Angry or anything.
You are hungover from the alcohol that somehow affects you.
Yeah. Well, no, he's not hungover yet. He's still drunk.
Oh,
and so
okay.
During this confession, they're getting closer and closer, and he's like lightly touching her, and she's like thinking he is gorgeous, and like she's kind of like waiting for him to kiss her, and like
I can definitely oversee the insane abuse.
Yeah, it's fine. I've watched many people die at your hands, but she's about to kiss him, and she's like waiting for him, and so then
he's gonna throw up because he's drunk.
No.
Oh, that's another trope I enjoy.
Ew, no.
I don't enjoy it, but it's just another trope. I guess it's just another trope.
What's the other worst thing she could do in this moment?
Oh, man.
From what we know so far, what's one thing he hates?
Well, I hope she doesn't say please.
She sure does, because the moment is now ruined. It's done. And so the next day, they're both hungover. Well, she's hungover for sure. And they're back on the horse, and being on a horse hungover sounds like the worst thing in the possible world.
Yeah, it sounds like hell, some would say.
The worst thing in the entire world is what I meant to say, and I said the worst thing in the possible world.
In all the
worst thing
world.
Possible. The worst thing in the entire world.
In every possible world that exists in the infinite universe, the worst thing in every possible world is being hungover on a horse. I said it.
Thank you for identifying what I meant. But they are galloping over the ocean again, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna puke. And she leans over to puke, and she falls into the ocean because she loses her balance. He thinks she was trying to kill herself.
You ever just lean over to puke and then fall into the ocean? It's such a
happens.
bummer.
I'm sure there's a story of somebody doing that on a boat.
Probably. Probably a lot of stories like that, actually.
And so he thinks she was trying to kill herself. And she was like, no, I just feel fucking miserable. And
she says as she falls into the ocean, no, I just feel miserable.
But he pulls her to shore.
Okay. As she's falling backwards down into the ocean.
And then just floating away.
Not doing this on purpose.
So miserable.
I really feel like shit.
So he gets her back to shore, and like in this heated moment, he like grabs her and kisses her. Okay.
Did
and
she
also
just
this
throw up?
Yeah, she did.
Just checking.
So this is like making a passionate moment when somebody was just feeling like really miserable also sounds like the worst.
Couldn't be me.
But this whole book doesn't feel appealing in the least bit. So it's also clear that during this kiss, this man doesn't really know what a kiss is supposed to be like. So he's like harshly going at it.
It's very hard to kiss someone who's not quite sure what a kiss should be like.
Yeah, and she kind of like low-key teaches him.
Look, we've all been there, and it's fine.
Yeah. Well,
he's got practice.
he finishes the kiss and starts yelling at her that she will not try and kill herself again. And she's like, that wasn't what I was doing, but okay. And in this very awkward moment that they are looting the house, that they come across next, they go to another house because they have to get supplies. They keep stopping at places and getting supplies. Yeah. And so he comes across a shotgun and he just bends the barrel in half and then walks away. Just like walks away. So at this moment, I'd like to ask you, what is the worst compliment you've been given before?
Well, I mean, backhanded ones.
So. No. Like more like just the worst worded compliment that you're like, was that a compliment?
The worst compliment that I've ever received.
Yes.
No, that's still true. It's always when someone's like, "Oh, you look like you tried today."
Yeah, or like, "Oh, you actually wore makeup today," or like, "Did you do something different with your hair?"
Specifically, being told that I've looked like I've tried.
Yeah. I have. Or, "Oh, you dressed up today." Like, "Oh, you dressed nice today." And it's like, I typically don't.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Normally I like looking like complete shit, but today I decided not to.
This man says to her, quote, "Your form is oddly pleasing to me."
Honestly, that's more flattering than anybody being like, "You look like you tried today." So thank you.
Yeah, and this man doesn't know what he's saying. No,
not at all.
So they have this weird conversation about gender and spirituality, and he explains that God is not a man or a woman. God surpasses gender concepts, which, true. Okay. And he's like, God is also not conformed to one religion. Humans have been the ones to distinguish different religions. Like, he is not, Jewish or Christian or, whatever. Yeah. It's so much more than that. And you guys were the ones that created these religious rules. God did not.
Right.
And then they're kind of having this conversation about what he is. And he's like, the only reason I know English or I'm in the male form or I'm wearing clothes is not for my benefit, but for yours. I'm just replicating what you guys are comfortable with. Right.
Right.
So that's just the other concept of like, he's not really human. And he wasn't born. He doesn't have emotions. Like, it's not like that. So it's kind of like, what is he?
Right.
Also, after this oddly religious, spiritual conversation, he kneels before her and says, quote, "I cannot decide if you are a toxin or a tonic, only that you have plagued my thoughts and filled my veins," which
I feel like we really went from 0 to 100.
It's odd, but it's smooth. I will take it. Get it? Like,
it doesn't work for me at all because it's like too strong, too fast for me personally.
This man has no chill. He has no chill. They start making out, and he brings her to their very small little tent that they're staying in this night.
Oh,
and he takes off his crown and lays it aside. And they're getting hot and heavy. And he kind of kills the mood when he asks her
with the disease.
What?
With the disease?
No. That would cut the book too short. But he asks her, "Am I experiencing love?" And she's like, "No, this is lust."
That's tough.
And mood equals killed. There are many times where I wrote in this analysis, mood equals killed. Like, mood done. We're not doing this. But then they're cuddling and she's falling asleep and she thinks she hears him say, quote, "This is not lust I feel, dear Sarah, and I hope you are half as afraid of it as I am." I'm doing a really bad time at quoting these things. I'm like stuttering over them.
That's okay.
"I hope you are half as frightened of it as I am." Okay.
Sure. I mean, I would be if I just had a conversation with a dude where he was like, "Am I in love with you?" And I was like, "No."
And then
"I am, and you should be scared."
And like, she's not quite there yet, but she's definitely having confusing feelings.
Sure.
And she keeps on being like, "Let's just chalk this up to he's hot." Right. Sure. So later, after she's wallowing about her confusing feelings, he starts verbally expressing his feelings. He has like diarrhea of the mouth. He like has no filter. He like all of a sudden needs to express everything. And he's like, I have this longing for you. And I'm afraid that the more feelings that awaken in me make me more human. And I'm not supposed to be doing this. And blah, blah, blah.
Is that even how that works? Who could say?
He also says that love, affection, and compassion are the few redeeming qualities of humanity. And she's like, well, then maybe you should stop the plague. And he's like, sorry, can't. Like, this is the ongoing conversation of like,
but imagine if he was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, you know what? You asked at the right time. I'm feeling it this time.
All those other times I told you no were for different reasons. But now that you asked the right way, sure.
It's kind of like when you wait for your parents to be in a good mood to ask them for something you know that they typically wouldn't say.
Yeah, it's like when you ask your dad instead of your mom because your dad says yes more often.
Very true. So after another house they try to be hosted at, the owners clearly don't want them there. The homeowner calls
Is there
Sarah.
ever an instance where someone is like, yeah, bring the plague man into the home, please? We'd love to keep you here.
I'm so glad you asked, because there is.
Yeah,
but that's not at this house. This house, the homeowner calls Sarah a whore. And of course, Pestilence gets pissed off and almost kills him and is like, it's one thing to insult me, it's another to insult her. Yeah.
I guess.
Okay, says the guy that's like been physically abusing her.
I have so many confusions, but we're taking that disbelief and we're just shoving it way in the sky.
So while they're staying at this house, Pestilence is being outwardly affectionate towards Sarah, and the family is being very judgmental. This is a guy who doesn't pick up on social cues, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, don't fucking do this here right now. And like, obviously the family's being kind of hostile towards her. And this is just affirming Pestilence's belief that humans are scum. Yeah.
Well, so honestly, still true.
The homeowner who called her a whore draws her out in the middle of the night at gunpoint. Wow, I cannot say a word today. He draws her out in the middle of the night, like from her bed, holding her at gunpoint. And they go into the middle of the woods and he's going to shoot her. And then Pestilence comes in, obviously.
Because why? Like, to what end?
Well, and his whole thing was he was going to barter and say, like, if you want me to keep her alive, then you'll leave me and my family alone. Which I'm like, okay. He can, like, you could put down this gun and he'll still kill you. You know,
clearly you haven't been present for the rest of the book.
Clearly you haven't been with us during this whole journey.
I don't think you're even listening to our podcast.
And if you haven't, you can join us on our social media at Say Smut Podcast on almost all platforms. Okay, so this man is now bleeding out because Pestilence has shot him with his arrows. And due to Sarah's surprising kindness during this moment, Pestilence was going to like make him bleed out. But he's like, you know, due to Sarah and her kindness, I will give you a quick death. And
I will let you die of disease instead.
Which this guy was a douche. So, I mean, like,
was a douche.
It's after this that they're having kind of an intimate moment. And she asks how long she will be his prisoner, which decent question, right? Like, how long are we going to do this? And he's like, let's do this until my job's done. So you're going to essentially ride with me to the end of the world.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Again, there's more spirituality, humanity talk that's really thought-provoking, I think. Even like, I just am a person that I like to sit back and think about things after, like, I don't know. I'm just one of those that, like, even though it's kind of a smutty book or it's like supposed to be a romance, I'll just sit back and be like, I wonder what I would do in this situation.
Right.
And there was a lot of that when they were talking about spiritual stuff where I was like, yeah, I guess there is some truth to that, you know, like humans created the rules of religion and we created how we wanted to worship our gods and whatever. Right. And so I just think it's interesting because at this point she asks him for a memory and he says, I've been around since before man was here and I will be around after man is here. And so he's seen all this history, right? Because like technically he could cause plague in animals or, you know, dinosaurs or dragons or like all sorts of crazy shit.
What was the large asteroid if not one big plague for dinosaurs?
Yeah, I mean,
it plagued them with instant death.
Oh, poor dinos. So I should now mention that our man has glowing tattoos.
Oh, rad.
Yeah, it's very fun. They're written in a holy language and they outline his purpose and his mission. Okay. There's not much to this. It's just a fun little fun fact. And like there's these things that like he can only say in his angelic language or whatever.
Conveniently wearing plot armor. Not plot armor, but like the plot of my whole shit.
It's not like that. It's more like something mercy, blah blah blah. Like it's more like religious-y purpose, right? Like the stuff you were talking about, in the scripture.
Yeah. I gotcha.
So at this point, our girl's seriously conflicted. This man is learning compassion with her by being worried about her well-being, and he's starting to enjoy human things like food, and he's expressing his emotions.
Jam is super good.
Look, have you tried this thing?
Have you put jam on bread before?
This man would die if he met the owners of Smuckers. It would be like the end. You mean you can buy this just anywhere?
Jellies, jams, preserves, those are technically, I think, different things.
I guess so. So they go into another house, and it obviously has occupants this time. It's an older man and woman. And the man is like, "Who's at the door, Ruth?" And she's like, "I think it's one of those 4 horsemen." And it's like so casual.
What a man.
So this couple welcomes them in and takes care of them. They're not afraid of him at all. And even the old woman kind of scolds Pestilence at one point, and it's kind of funny. But
she's just like, "Oh, we were gonna die anyway."
Literally, they quite literally say, like, "We're not afraid of death. We've lived a full life. We've had wonderful children, and we're old and we're tired and we're hurting." And so
it's lucky that they did that.
Yeah, I mean, they've lived a full life. Anyway, moral of the story is that Rob and Ruth are amazing people. And they're staying at Rob and Ruth's, and he comes to Sarah in the night, and he thinks that she's sleeping, and he does this huge word vomit of like all of his feelings.
What a hilarious thing to do over someone as you think they're sleeping.
Again, this guy has no social cues. He does not know what's norm and what's not. And it's this big confession with lots of flowery words. Blah, 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 blah. Wow. Sarah, get it together. Flowery words, but he's essentially smitten with her, and she's changed him deeply. Okay? But Rob and Ruth get really sick, and Sarah is there tending to them. And we have a full-blown The Notebook moment where they are dying together and, holding hands, and they even pray for Pestilence. Like they said,
interesting.
He's been sent by God. Like he has a hard journey ahead. He's going to see some really crazy shit. And that's going to be hard on him, we would think. So really sad.
Yeah.
The couple dies. I'm going to remind everybody at this point, if you're feeling sad, that it's not real. None of this is real. But this leads to another argument between Sarah and Pestilence about, this book is a lot of traveling, breaking and entering, arguments, making out. Okay.
That's all my favorites.
Yes. And he is like half-heartedly being like, "I'm still keeping you alive to make you suffer. But I did just confess my entire love for you."
Oops.
So Rob dies first, and then Ruth dies. And Ruth even says, like, "It was a blessing to leave this world together." She even forgives Pestilence before she dies, which, like, he didn't even ask for it. So, like, wow, this woman's a saint. Make her go down in history.
Make her go down to hell.
Oh my gosh. But now, what do you think happens after Ruth and Rob die and Pestilence buries them?
Are they gonna do it?
They're gonna have a romantic bath. Okay.
I don't like that as the next step.
And just when things are getting a little hot,
my face is so sad.
I know. Just as they're getting a little hot and heavy in the bathtub, she says the word, please.
No!
And this is an automatic red light for him. But then this time he's like, oh, I can't resist. I'm just so horny. And so she finally gives pause and is like, maybe we shouldn't do this in the house that Ruth and Rob just died in.
No shit.
And he's like, why? They're dead and beyond this place now. Like this does not matter to them.
Because I think it's gross.
And she's like, okay, fair enough. But they don't end up doing anything. So they're on the road again. And they hit Seattle, and she realizes the plague's already here. Oh. Turns out one of those nights they were at Rob and Ruth's, he just rolled out and went ahead and just plagued the crap out of the place because he was like, I didn't want you to feel bad about it.
Because we needed conflict.
Because I just didn't want you to see. I didn't want to be ambushed. I didn't
because
want
everybody loves Seattle, and I didn't want you to see this.
Yeah,
but I had to plague it.
It is a cultural hub for
full of hipsters,
and
that was the plague.
That was 90s grunge was the plague.
But espresso and music recommendations when you go there. Now we gotta just avoid it altogether.
Oh, sorry.
It's not even what hipsters do. I just pulled that fully out of pocket. Anyway,
so there's another confession where he says that she's accomplished what no one else has, which is that she has awoken his heart.
I hate that.
Awoken his heart.
I basically said that, and it still sucks.
And it doesn't take much for them to hook up. And obviously, this man is a virgin. And then in my text here that I wrote out, I said, well, is he a virgin? If he's technically not a man, is he a virgin? I don't know.
Not really.
I don't know. I mean,
what is virginity if not a man-made construct?
I mean, also true. We will also do a poll. Is Pestilence considered a virgin or not? So during the beginning, when they're taking off the clothes, he confesses that he was going to kill her that first night. But there was this strange light and the shadow that cast on her tent that made out the angelic word for mercy. Okay. Oh. So all those times he was like, I'm just keeping you to make you suffer. It was like he thought he had gotten a sign from God to have mercy on her. Mm-hmm. And somehow this gets the romantic juices flowing to not die.
I wanted to murder you, but it felt like God told me no. Does that make you horny?
God moved me to not murder you, but instead penetrate you. And I wanted to make that as uncomfortable as I possibly could. So they have very normal sex, except for the part where his crown manages to stay on his head the whole time. This is a very perplexing concept for me. It just defies all logic. And then it's kind of funny because there's this moment when they're having sex and he's astonished that he's inside her. It's this impossible concept that an appendage of his could possibly be within her body.
The man who controls illness and kills people by plague can't fathom intercourse.
Can't wrap his brain around it.
That's dudes for you, man.
But this man has no chill because what does he do the morning after they have sex? What do you think he does? A very religious man.
Praise?
No. He takes her to a church. And he says
to marry her.
He's
really religious.
You've given me yourself fully. Therefore, I want to show my commitment.
No.
Very old school.
I was joking about the marriage, so I was joking.
You weren't, because you spoke it into existence.
I'm so mad.
And she's flabbergasted. She's like, I'm not going to marry you just because I spread my legs for you.
Can you imagine after your first ever hookup, if the next day that person surprise brought you to a church and was like, now it is time to return the favor.
Now
we will get married right now.
I want you to know I'm fully committed to you in this moment. Thank you for spreading your legs. And so she's like, I'm not going to do this just because we had sex once. And he's like, oh my gosh, you've done this before, haven't you? You have given yourself to someone else.
You're married.
And she's like, I am literally going to throw you off this horse if you don't stop going down this, misogynistic route of yours. Like, this is so bullshitty of you to like essentially slut shame me Old Testament style. Okay. And he's like, you are not going to sleep with anybody else. It's just me. And she's like, that's not your decision to make. And then this whole fight results in them giving each other the silent treatment.
Which is great too, because in the apocalypse, the thing we're all concerned about is who you're having sex with and how often, and having it in general. So,
this
all high priorities on my apocalypse list. By apocalypse, if you will.
She was just that good. It was just that good. So what do you think will break the silent treatment?
Well, I have to in my logic and reason brain, it would be that as they're traveling, there'll be another ambush and they have to like separate because someone's got to rescue someone, or like something like that has to happen where they team back together.
Very close. Pestilence.
I wrote the book.
Pestilence gets his face half blown off. Turns out
similar.
This little area that they were in had like this kind of like group of people that were ready to ambush. Yeah. And so she's kind of like, they think she was being held prisoner. So like they rescue her kind of, and they are like shooting him and like doing terrible things to him.
And she's like, no, don't. And they're like, but he's evil.
Yeah.
She's like, but Daddy, I love him.
Yeah. Precisely. And so she steals a gun from these people and like kind of like holds it up and is like, let me out of here. And then she finds his horse, which she has internally named Trixie, which I love that. And the horse leads her to him, which he is a mangled mess. And she knows he will recover, but it's obviously not an easy sight to see. Yeah. And she ends up getting him out of the area safely. And when he's conscious and semi put together again, she cries over what's happened to him and is really touched. And he's really touched about her feelings on this. And she also apologizes for what they did to him and what she has done to him, because she's like, I did this to you too.
That's true.
And after some pretty incense, incense, oh my gosh, I swear, it's just been
Sarah and I are having a hard time today.
Is it after some pretty intense professions of admiration, not love yet. They're going to have sex again. And during that argument at the church, she called their sexual experience fucking. And he was like, no, that was lovemaking. And so when they're having sex this time,
really confused about the nuances of lust and love and confidence that we're making love.
And, it's so funny because he's like, then when they're having sex this time, he says, this is love making. And she's like, it's kind of like slower than this. Like love making's kind of slower. So he tries to slow down and he's like, okay.
I appreciate that apparently the delineation of fucking to love making is tempo.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I need to go faster. He's like, I can't go this slow.
I can't make love to you. I can only
cannot make love to you. And also like, what is that tempo then? Does somebody have like a number for me?
How slow does it have to be before it's love? Because I gotta know, we gotta know we're communicating, I guess.
So after sex, she's like, I'm not your prisoner anymore. And he's like, then accept my proposal. And she's like, no, but I did steal a man's gun and almost killed for you today. So I think that gets me out of being a prisoner now. Like, she's got a point.
It's very, very Twilight.
So she is in the middle of reciting poetry to him on their next ride. And he just point blank asks if she's ready for children because they've been having unprotected sex. And that's a real possibility. And she's like, I didn't think I could get pregnant from you.
I like how in general, when you have unprotected sex, pregnancy is a real possibility. But when you do it with the harbinger of illness, part of one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, I don't assume he can get me pregnant.
Yeah, it's a little perplexing, I would say. But the crazy part is he's like, I'm thrilled at the idea of having children, which is very confusing because he's also here to kill us all.
Doesn't make any sense.
We just kind of breeze past this concept, which I think is wild. I don't know. It makes me feel like he just wants kids to have like little playthings.
Yeah.
And then he's
weird.
like, well, and then when I'm done, I'm done. Like,
just make them sick and kill them.
Another community tries to praise Pestilence when they come in. And
I was waiting to see if there'd be like a cult type vibe where they're like, we love this, kill everybody.
They're trying to like appeal to his ego, right? And they try and give him women. And obviously this does not work.
No.
Then there is a place that they go where a bomb was planted and the bomb goes off. And there's almost like this gang of people that take Pestilence and Sarah hostage. And when Sarah wakes up, she's like, holy shit. Like, these people, they had known he was coming with a woman. Like, they had heard the reports that he had a woman. Mm-hmm. So like everybody's calling her a whore and like a slut and all these terrible things.
I just can't get over that everybody immediately assumed that she was fucking him and not that she was a prisoner.
Yeah,
like, immediately we're like, the only thing that woman could be doing is fucking that man.
Yeah, because like why would he keep her though? You know, like why would he even keep her if he wasn't getting something out of it? That's their idea.
But even then, you are still assuming that the one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is hanging out with this woman, and this woman's doing it because she likes it, and not because the one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse might be keeping her prisoner.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of resentment there, probably.
I just wouldn't have assumed that she was doing it for fun.
Yeah, that's true. But also, why would he ever, you know?
Well, yeah, but that's not her fault.
I know, but like...
I just want to keep her.
But like, why does she get to survive and they don't, is I think the idea, too.
So you're jealous. Interesting.
Yeah. Interesting. So when she wakes up, she finds that they are doing she's like being tied up and she has injuries and stuff. And she finds that the gang has like had done everything that they can to kill Pestilence. I mean, they have like pretty much, I mean, they've done terrible, terrible things to this man. And at one point, Pestilence charred body like half crawls to Sarah. Which is kind of sweet. I'll give it to her.
Does it remind her of the time she set him on fire and he asked for help and she said no?
It just was like some
because it should
like residual trauma. So he carries her somewhere because they had left them to kind of die out there. And so when he recovers,
he carry her somewhere when he was all charred up.
Well, he's like a skeleton man again, right? Because he's regenerating.
Is that his true form, being a skeleton?
No, man? It's just his body's regenerating. Can't move that fast.
I'm just asking.
So she she feels he's carrying her somewhere and she doesn't know where yet, and she's fading in and out from her injuries, and all she overhears is Pestilence asking somebody to save her because he loves her, and the other person's like, oh, you love her? I hope you suffer while she dies then. And it is kind of like well, you have killed people we love too. So
you do suck.
What better time to meet his brother than when she's dying, right?
Because we have to set up for the next book.
Oh, actually, this is not for the next book. This is because Death is the 4th book.
Oh, I didn't know this was Death. Got it.
Yeah. Death, remember when I said like he's kind of the lead, like the ringleader. Yeah. So she is clearly like in a Harry Potter almost dead situation, white train station.
Yeah. Baby Voldemort under the bench.
Yeah. And so Death is like sitting there and he's like, so you're the girl that my brother fell in love with. And she's like, I think I'm dead. And he's like, I mean, yeah, technically, but you're kind of in between. And he's like, technically your body doesn't want you back. And like, I'm supposed to take you now. But I am very intrigued about how
my brother really likes to fuck you.
I'm just really intrigued and I've got to help a brother out, you know? And so I'm going to send you back. But I just want you to know I'm watching this
After
situation.
That, no take backsies. Second time's the charm.
No takes backsies. Quack, quack, see bat. So she wakes up in the hospital. Turns out he had taken her there and most of the doctors wouldn't save her. So he revenge killed them. And I'm not talking like plague killed them. Like
no, like exploded their eyes out and stuff.
Blood coming out of their ears and eyes killed them.
For sure, yeah.
And so obviously this doesn't go over well with Sarah. And even though she's like mad at him, there's this weird, like, hey, tell me again how you love me.
You can't just make people's blood explode out of their bodies. You silly. I love you so much.
You silly goose. Just don't do it again.
Don't stop it.
Don't you dare.
Don't kill that nurse. Nurse gets a bloody nose. Oh, you better not. I'm just kidding. It's a bloody nose. Get out of here.
So sorry, but that's so funny. But she's literally sitting on the horse with him and being like, okay, do you want to tell me it again? And then she like is recovering at another abandoned location. He decides to go down on her. And she's like surprised by this. And I'm like, you're not the virgin here.
There's a lot going on.
I'm confused. Anyway, there's a lot of healing, kind of fighting, kind of lovemaking.
A lot of healing.
And then there's this weird moment where she's like, he would make such a good dad. And I'm like, oh, what was the tip off? Killing humanity?
I really like the way he killed that whole family before.
I really love when he killed all
family.
of those people that we've watched for the last 250 pages. And also he would kill your children, but okay.
And I can't emphasize this enough. What better time to bring children onto a planet by force with no control of theirs whatsoever into an apocalypse than in the apocalypse?
Yes. And so one morning she wakes up and she finds reports that the plagues has spread states away, even into other countries. Turns out he can magically extend his reach. I don't know how he Santa Claused that, but
it just feels like maybe he could have just done it all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, do we really have to do all this? But he's like, look, I did my purpose. And we will be the last 2 people on Earth. And she clearly doesn't take this out well. And she points out that love is supposed to bring out the best in people, not the worst. And she tries to leave him, but what does he do? But lock her in a bedroom for 8 days and says, you will forgive me. So after 8 days of coexisting, he finally opens the door and is like, you know what? You can go. I've clearly lost you. You clearly hate me. And she's like, yeah, I do. Bye. See you later.
Not convinced we were ever in love. Goodbye.
And she then like hikes back to society, whatever is left of society. And she for weeks doesn't hear from him, about him. And she makes it to an outpost and she discovers that the illness actually stopped a little while ago. And all those people who got sick recovered. And there's been no sign of pestilence anywhere. She's like, great, I'm going home. So she goes home. She finally makes it home and sees her friends, sees her family. Things are quiet for some time until there's a random knock at her door. And it's him. And he tells her, I'm no longer Pestilence. There's no bow, there's no arrow, there's no crown. By the way, those things just like automatically generate wherever he's at. So even if he ditches them, they like follow him.
Come back on.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so he has normal clothes on. And we find out that this man has stalked her since she left that house. Because he was like, well, you were also severely injured and going into the wilderness. So I wanted to make sure you didn't die. But you took care of yourself pretty well. Good job. Props on that. And he's like, I wasn't going to let you get rid of me that easily. And he's like, obviously I reversed the illness. I actually was doing that before you even left. So it kind of gives him like a slightly redeeming quality.
I guess, but also not really, because you then still got a bunch of people.
Yep. And he tells her, my purpose was served. And after some discussion, she takes him back and he takes on a new name. Would you like to guess what the name is?
It's just Trixie. He just takes the horse name.
Like, he does say at one point, Trixie. She's like, no, a human name, please.
Trixie is a human name and the name of an incredible drag queen.
Yes. He takes on the name Victor, which is not too different from Conqueror, right? So sure. He is now Victor. And the epilogue is 5 years later. They're just chilling, living life. When Victor gets this, like, that's so Raven feeling. And she's like, what's wrong? And he says, pray for the world, dear Sarah, because war is coming. And so that's kind of like the end of this book. We go on to see Victor and Sarah later. they meet up, and there is this moment where some of these men trade in their immortality to be human.
Okay, so that's just a thing you can do. I had some follow-up questions about that.
Yeah, so he does become like human and starts aging with Sarah.
I didn't know that you could just not be a horseman of the apocalypse anymore with no consequence generally whatsoever, other than you don't be immortal, but that's kind of the thing you wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
So really no consequence whatsoever.
Yeah, and the other thing is, the really interesting thing about War's book is that he doesn't hold back about liking the girl he's with. He ties her down immediately. He's like, yeah, I'm into you. And she's like, I'm not into this. And then Famine is the only one who like reluctantly saves humanity. Like, he still doesn't like humans. He's like, I only like this human. Let's make this all clear. I only like this one.
Everyone's got different relationships with people.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting, his version and how these other guys come up then later, because then Death, I actually loved Death's book because there's like one woman he cannot kill, or I can't remember what it is, but she has like some immunity to him or something. And so it's interesting because they kind of have a cat and mouse thing where he is trying to understand her and figure her out. And so she's like running from him and he's like pursuing her to like, why can't I get through to this?
Yeah.
So
why can't I kill you?
Yeah, literally. So there is kind of these moments of like, they do have differential views or whatever. Yeah. And I do like Famine and Death's books. And then I will say too that this book predominantly shows white people, but the next one is set in the Middle East. They talk about Middle Eastern culture. And then the third book, Famine, is set in South America, where our main female character is actually a sex worker at one point, and she speaks many times in Spanish. And then the last one, our main female character is a Black woman. So there is diversity shown to some degrees in the other books, but not this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are you feeling? What are your final thoughts about our book?
Fascinating stuff. I had fun talking about it. It was fine. I thought it was fine.
Yeah. I have to say, on the reread, I was feeling like, oh, this is a lot darker than I remember it being. I think, again, I come back to, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, would you have sex with a horseman of the apocalypse just to save humanity?
I mean, yeah, but not probably that one.
Not that one. Not Pestilence?
No, I think I would do Death because it sounds way cooler.
No, Death has wings. So if you have that type of a fetish.
I mean, to clarify to the world, not specifically. I just thought it sounded cool to say we're going to fuck Death. But
I just say I liked the smart assiness of Famine the most, but also because he's kind of like the emo goth one of them.
I will say IRL, I'm gonna relate to the one who is the most emo goth and hates people, and it's gonna be Famine.
Yeah. So, would you like to describe our cover for us really quick?
Oh, interesting. I don't even know how to really describe this. So the cover of the book just has pestilence. I just want the world to know that I know it's not my word, and it hasn't been the whole podcast. Anyway, but he's up front and center. His skin tone is kind of a lot of different colors. So he doesn't he has the characteristics of a white blonde dude, but in this picture, he looks different colors to me. I need you to know that he looks like he's blue and orange and reddish.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I think that's just essentially the video call we're on. He's very much a white man in has shading on him because there's like shadows.
Okay, well the shading makes him look fully like he's got purple, blue, and some jaundiced orange skin. So
jeez Louise. Okay, get to the point.
Anyway, sorry. You can see his glowing tattoos. He's got gold armor on one sleeve and a very hunch Abercrombie and Fitch male model hand on belt loops, moody kind of. It's an interesting. He's just there and he's hunched over. He's not wearing a shirt. He's very Abercrombie and Fitch meets the apocalypse.
Yeah,
very dark. Apparently he's white. I'm so sorry. Not that I didn't know he was white looking like a white dude, but his skin looks purple and blue on the camera to me.
Okay, what are you going to give diversity?
I mean, like a 1 or 1 or a 2.
I'm at a 1.
This not to be no tea, no shade. It's just a white book because all white people in this book.
What are you going to give the plot?
I'll give it a 3. Not my favorite of the plots that we've done. It was okay.
It was just a lot of going to different places and having conversations.
Well, and I like the concept, so I think the other books sound interesting too.
Yeah, what would you give the Smut? I'm giving it a 1.
Yeah. So part of it for me, it is not. Also, who cares what we think? Yeah. But for me, the setting is never going to be good because I don't like the apocalypse. So none of it's sexy to me at all. It's just all bad for me. It's all one bad for me.
Yeah. I mean, find joy where you can.
I dislike apocalyptic works so much that it just was never going to work for me.
So what are you going to give Smut then?
So I'm going to give Smut like a 2.
Nice. What are you giving the cover? For a book like this, what would you even expect the cover to be?
Well, it is about what I would expect. It's very like, dark cover, detailed in the illustration. It is about what I would expect. Not very cartoony. So I'll give that like a 3 or a 4. It's fine cover. I don't have a problem with art.
3 or 4?
3.5.
Oh my gosh. Way to make things freaking difficult for me.
3.5. Don't tell me what to do.
Okay, so that comes out to me giving a 40% and you giving a 48%, which makes this the lowest scored book. Again, I think I come around. I hate that I picked this book now because I'm like, I wish I would have come around to the fact that I'm like, okay, this wasn't as active as I thought it was going to be.
Sure.
But I still like the concept. I
like the concept too.
Like the idea. And I think if you like it too, definitely go and read the rest of the books because they're interesting. What was your What the Smut or Say Smut moment?
My What the Smut moment is the entire storyline of just because it's funny and cringy to me, him being like, are we in love? Are we doing love? And she's very much like, no, we're hooking up. And after they hook up, he's like, we got to get married.
No, that's absolutely my favorite moment too.
Like, it's very funny. It's not like What the Smut, like that's bad, should have been there. I enjoyed it very much. It's so goofy.
It is so funny. And I also love the moment where he was like, I cannot believe I'm inside you right now. This is wild.
I did also write barf kiss frowny face.
Yes. Rough.
Not great. But he doesn't care about that kind of stuff.
He probably doesn't.
Not a human at that point.
At that point, he had watched her on the toilet so many times.
He only just found out about Jam. He doesn't know anything.
Poor little boy. Sweet boy.
So sad.
One brain cell.
No thoughts. Jam. It's just Jam.
Well, everybody, stock up, get ready for the apocalypse. I
won't be there. I've already tapped out.
Be there.
I quit.
Yeah. But good luck, and we'll see you at the next one.
Goodbye.